Hello again, folks, and I am going to be doing a bit of an interesting thing here. I decided that given that this is now 3 years that I've had with the Viper VIP2, and again, I know there's not too many other videos out there um, with the talking about the amp more or given very many sound details. So what I'm going to attempt to do is have the mic on so I can comment at the same time. And what I'm planning to do over the next few videos is I'm going to explore um, we'll say, the three aspects of this amp. Today, in this video, I will be going over the available Stomp boxes that are in this amp. The next video I will attempt to do will be the effects. And then lastly, we will explore the way the amp modeling is in this, going through the software interface over USB in the Viper VIP series specifically. And again, it can vary depending on the VIP 1, 2, or 3 model, so do keep that in mind. Again, just for playing purposes, I'll be using the Harley Benton TE52 that is modified running standard D tuning, Reball super slinky strings, I believe, are what I have on here. And there might be some hum or whatever, but hopefully this will work out approximately and good, and we will be able to explore this together. So let's start further. As you see here, I have taken the software edit and I have actually enlarged it onto the screen so that you folks can see. For the purposes of demonstrating the stomp boxes, there will be no delay, no reverb enabled. The only thing that the stomp boxes will be running through will again be what you see here on the screen. That is the classic 50 amp sim, everything nooned and in the clean channel. So let us go to the Stomp box selection and look at our selections. So in this setting, a lot of the effects are analog based effects. And as you see here, we have a selection of analog flange, analog phase, a boost, a chorus, a compressor, of course the fuzz, which many have seen me actually use, ring modulation, slapback echo, slicer effect, tube screamer, Univibe, and a wah effect. When again I will be utilizing the Sandpara 2 controller on the floor down here at my feet. If an effect happens to actually kick on the right side foot pedal controller, I will actually use that to modulate the effect or do whatever it does to control the effect when I do the little bit of a sound sample. So further on top of that, I'm not going to be able to perfectly do notes or chords or whatever, but I'm going to try to give some type of audio sample in understanding of how the effect is on itself in a totally clean patch or clean setting on this amp. And we will mess around with some of the knobs and attributes of the effect and see how they are. And I will give a little opinion at the end of each effect. So with that said, let's go. First up, let's check out the analog flange. We have a simple speed and depth control. And as you can hear, we already have it. So it's fairly basic, and this is how I think I have it set up previously. So let us noon it on speed and depth and see what we get. Sounds pretty nice to my ear. So let's dabble. Let's go extreme top end of the depth, extreme bottom end of the speed, and see what this generates now for a sound. To me, that sounds very nice to the ear, and I think that is actually a very usable effect in that regard. So let's totally go full out with the effect and see how good or bad it sounds now. if I'm honest, it kind of sounds Leslie-like, especially when doing these, barring the bottom 3 strings here. Turn the speed back a little bit. So, in regards to the analog flange, to my ear and the little bit of playing around here as we discovered, I think this is a very usable effect, even though it is limited to having two knob controls on it. So let us now move on to the next effect. Actually, let us simply select it. That way we do it more in the proper direction. So, analog flange. Excuse me while I have a glass of water. So, as we can see here, again, this is definitely another, I think, very usable effect in the current setting that it is. Again, let us do the noon and see what we get here now. Again, another very usable effect we can hear. Again, to me, I think that's kind of the thing that's been the big thing about the whole Vypyr line of modular effects from Peavey. or modular amps from Peavey, I'm sorry, that they offer up great value considering most of these amps are sub $500. So when you're able to access these effects, which is the little caveat and why you need to have the computer interface, and also the added benefit not only for the looper but actually for being able to switch effects on and off and edit patches and so forth of the Sandpara 2 controller. The fact that if you can find the controller for a good price, new or used, as well as the new amp, it's a killer combo, and it's usable enough for most people. And I feel while it can be a little bit complex and for people to understand and get around how to do things, I do think it has a little bit less of a learning curve compared to something along the lines of, say, like the Line 6 Helix or Kemper or Axfex and so forth and so forth. Okay, so let's slow the speed down, turn the depth up, and see what we get now, if I haven't done this already. And again, let's ramp up the speed to match the depth. Kind of lends pretty well to it's not a perfect representation of a certain LZ song, but it would help you get there if you just used only that. Okay, so again, this is another front end stomp box effect, again, that I feel does have a lot of musical usage to the user or anyone who does look at buying this amp. So let's now move to the actual boost, which is really just simply analog boost. So let's just kind of put it around noon here and see. as we heard there, the actual dB meter in the OBS that I'm recording this through actually went totally into red there. And as you can hear, it's really hissing and humming. So let's back the drive down to about here. And let us start with the level totally off. I'll bring some of the level back in. More level back in. We'll say noonish. And of course, 3/4. So in regards to this effect, again, this is another Stompbox effect that is, again, very usable. At this point in time, here's the only problem that you run into with the Vypyr 1st gen, which is the, I believe, 15, 30, 75, and 100. The Vypyr Tube series, which also falls under the Generation 1. And the VIP series of Vypyrs, which most people refer to as Generation 2. Great amount of effects, but again, here's the initial problem. These effects are stuck in the Stompbox area, and you can only use one of them at a time with your amp or effect, as well as the universal delay and reverb. So that limits it in that regard. That is I would say, the one main disadvantage of this amp. But Peavey, when they did design the 3rd generation, the Peavey Vypyr Pro 100, which is only one model they've put out of it that has been out since 2016, they were smart in their thinking and understanding about this issue. You can, on the Vypyr 100 Pro, you can take these amps, effects, and stomp boxes, and I believe they have 4 banks. It's either 4 or 6 banks. So you can actually rotate effects or amps or stomp boxes or emulations of 7-string and so forth. The various things that are actually on the amp, you can actually assign them to the according banks, and with the turn of a knob, you can actually move them into your 4 categories. So in this case, say you loved the way the analog boost sound, the analog phase and flange, and the classic amp, you could then in turn put in your 4 presets or whatever on the Vypyr Pro. You could put them boost, analog flange, analog phase, and in the last bank, your classic 50 amp. And you can set it up that way. So that's the kind of the last little drawback in regards to the VIP series and the Generation 1 Peavey Vypyr amps. So let us move on from this. Again, in summary, the booster again is a very usable effect. I think they give you enough controls to manipulate it and get a good sound out of it, and we'll go from there. Let us move over to chorus, which we are given a simple speed and a depth control. So again, also I forgot to mention the pickups that I am using in the Harley Benton T52 Telecaster. I am using the middle position, so I'm using neck and bridge. Full volume, full tone, and that's it. So let's hear the chorus effect. Pretty lush sounding so far. Nice. Let us slow the speed and increase the depth and see what kind of chorus effect we will get now. Not bad. Can't say I use chorus much, but that's just for the time being. Now let's match the speed with the depth, and here we kind of a warbly kind of sound we got now. It's kind of got that organy kind of Leslie kind of sound a little bit, I would say. it's a nice effect, and again, just like I was saying, so far, a lot of the stomp boxes or the stomp box sections in this amp do have a analog aspect to them. So a lot of people, they prefer analog over digital, and that's the one thing that the Vypyr does have better over a fair amount of the Line 6 products that came out before Yamaha took over Line 6. Is Peavey had the mix perfect between analog and digital sound processing, so a lot of their effects really came out well. Again, back when I actually was the owner of a Vypyr Tube 60, to me that was the quintessential modeling platform for sounds, because not only did you have the analog and digital in the signal processing, but you further had the warmth and the depth that the tubes in the actual amp gave you, which was a 12 AX7 in the pre and dual 6L6s in the power section of the 60s specifically. So again, another very usable effect. Now let us check out the comp. And as you can hear, it's very much like a compressor. So, to illustrate the compressor effect, it's supposed to level everything out. So I'm just going to sweep across the 7th fret, and I'm going to randomly pick some strings hard, some strings softly, with how the current compression is set right now, and see what we get for a sound. I picked hard, soft, hard, soft, soft, hard. On the way back up, I actually picked from the high E string back to the low E. I actually went hard, soft, 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 and then hard on the E. So, just to prove that point. And again, another thing you will see with the compression is, again, boosting the overall sound level, as you can hear, as well as when I turn the sensitivity down. Let's turn it back down to where it is. even there, when I'm looking at the decibel reader in the OBS, the difference between the previous setting I just had it at, it was totally maxing it out into the red, whereas that last little bit I played there, it was barely hitting the peak line. So again, another useful effect on the amp. Again, playing around with it, you can set it up to your taste and liking, and in creating your own patch. Again, this one I have used many times on many of my streams and many of my playing demos and samples. It is the Fuzz face, or in the case of how they've styled this, this is actually done based off of a Big Muff Fuzz. So that's basically what this is supposed to be emulating, is a Big Muff Fuzz. So again, let's check it out. Fuzzy, very Big Muff-esque if you actually do understand fuzz effects, and more so the Big Muff sound circuit in the fuzz. So controls on this are pretty simple. It's just level and drive. So let's crank up the level to max, but let's minimize the drive and see what we get now. Sustain has backed off a little bit with the sound of the drive. Now let's go full bore. around the 60s and that. So again, big, sustainy, fuzzy. Now let's actually keep the drive at max and give a quick play with the level off and see if actually there is anything coming through. As you can hear, it's kind of taking the tone out a little bit. You still have a lot of the sustain coming through. Just add a little bit more level back in. So to me, as of owning an El-Ray FX Lucha Fuzz, which is an excellent big muff representation from them, the Joyo Voodoo Octave that I was gifted nicely by somebody, and DOD FX69, the classic fuzz from back then. I've owned a few, and if you're not a big fuzz fan and don't understand fuzz in an essence, this will get you by with what you, if you ever have to use fuzz at some point in time. So to me, I'd say it's a very competent fuzz. A little limited, but again, you're dealing with a basic need, not a high-end need of, like, say, like a boutique fuzz pedal. And most people that buy these amps definitely won't be looking like for boutique level type of effects. Again, the great thing about this amp in that regard. So again, the fuzz is a recommendation by me. And lastly, before we move on to the next effect, don't forget, this is just with the classic amp and only in its clean mode. So let me just show something again, which is another great thing about fuzz is what you stack in an amp and what you send the fuzz into and how it affects how it sounds. So here's on the clean channel of this. Excuse me. So let's move to the crunch, which we will again put everything back to our previous setting of everything at mid and everything pre-gain and post-gain on full, everything else at 12. So now let's hear the same thing played through in the crunch channel aspect of this amp, or at least the emulation. So as you can hear, there's a totally different sound. So by dirting up the amp that you're playing into and then feeding a fuzz into it, you usually get the best sound range from, instead of just using a fuzz into a clean, as we've heard previously. Now let's go into the lead, and I'm not going to screw around with the settings here, and we'll hear a difference again further. Okay, I'm going to default back to the patch setting default just by clicking on the Stomp 2 controller to reload it. So we were last using the fuzz. Unfortunately, we still got a bunch more effects, and if you've stuck with me through the 50 minutes so far, thank you very much, and thank you very much for watching. So let's go to ring modulation. Alright folks, let's check out the ring modulation. I had to pause the video there quickly for a second and answer the phone and take a little break, I guess, doing this. So here's the ring modulation effect. I don't use it a lot, so I'm sorry if it's kind of a so-so example from it. So here we go. I don't use the effect much, but again, I feel like I probably will look into it further in the future. Let's change the frequency again more and see what we get playing this a little bit. Let's turn up the mix to get it more substantial into the sound effect. Interesting so far. Let's pull the mix back just a bit to give it that it's equal the effects and equal the input. So I'm not a big fan of ring modulation to begin with. Seems pretty cool so far. Again, maybe I'll figure out some use for it in the future. It's usable. It's good. Not too much else I can say about it so far. So let us move on to the next effect. And this is definitely a popular... I myself, I would say I'm very much a slapback echo kind of guy in regards to liking this sound. So let us put the mix at 50, put the time at 50, and again, let's see what the slapback echo sounds like in this amp. Again, when you do a bend, you can really hear the analog aspect of it. I haven't had too many echoes. I would say my previous true echo was actually a Tokai echo effect way back in the early to mid 80s, and I loved that like crazy. There's the only issue with this effect, and again, the drawback on, again, buying a modular and some of the effects that they put on. All you have is time and mix. There's no way to control the amount of delay or repeats or regeneration, which again ties into repeat, I believe, from understanding other effects or pedals settings. So let's actually totally shorten it to the shortest. Almost nothing there. Oh, you can hear it a little bit there, just very, very faint. So let's bring it up a little bit more here. Bring up the time a little bit more. That was really nice. And back where I originally started from. I would say so far the time effect seems to be just more of a room depth than actual delay. Let's step it up to the 2/3 setting. This kind of sounds more like a natural echo going on. Like a true traditional slap echo. Let's max out the time. Now, at this setting, it reminds me a lot of Les Paul back in the early days of when Les Paul was starting out in his musical career, playing with echo, delay, and reverb. This sounds like classic era. slapback echo. Let's add the mix up a little bit and see how good or bad this gets. Now you can get some of the echo trails coming through with the mix. So the mix probably has a little bit to do with the trailing or regeneration of the actual slapback. So if you're not a fan of digital delay on this amp, and you don't mind sacrificing the stomp area on it, definitely would recommend using this slap echo. And you got a good idea on, you know, what you can make it do. So again, another useful stomp effect on this amp. Now, slicer, we get into an interesting territory. If you've ever heard of Rage Against the Machine, the guitarist Tommy Morello is known for a kind of stutter effect, which is usually used with a kill switch, which kind of gives you this kind of on-off signal effect. Well, that's basically what this slicer effect in this amp does, except in this instance, when you have the same pair of controller available to you, you actually can affect the speed and the amount of speed that the slicer effect is going at. So here's default on the screen. Let's give a strum and see how it sounds. So that's default. Now I'm going to take my foot and rock it slowly forward on the parameter pedal, which is the right foot controller on the Sandpara 2. And you can hear how the effect has actually gone down to a slower pace, and it cuts out more. Now I'll slightly keep increasing it. And this is now pretty much full speed, and it gets almost like a typewriter tap 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 kind of sound. There we go. There's with it totally off. There's with it slowed down at its slowest setting. Put it up a bit here. So this kind of effects are usually best with single notes, but you can, as I strum a G chord here, you can kind of can work with chords as well too, but usually slower single note type stuff works best. So let me actually go into the setting here and mess with it some. Now, another interesting aspect about this effect is you could actually kind of use it as a metronome, really, if you really thought about it in that sense. So it's useful not only as a possible effect in a song or something you might be creating, but in a practice aspect as well too, because you could set the speed and you can have it dictate, you know, to play when the effect is on and not to play when the effect is off or whatever. So as you can hear me picking here constantly, you can hear that not all the notes are coming through. Prime example there. So again, another useful effect, and again, another freebie they throw in with the amp. So let us again move on to the next Stomp, which we're finally getting around to the last 2 or 3 effects. And I think basically the wah is self-explanatory. I don't have to do much with that. So again, we will just cover the Tube Screamer and the last effect. So again, basically the Tube Screamer classic style effect. I don't have to go much into discussion about it. Let's hear how it sounds where it is at the moment. So, let us see if we can totally back off the level and hear the actual... Well, actually you do get some of the effect coming through. Let's totally turn up the drive and keep the level where it is and see what we got now. So again, just even where we have it here, we have literally, it starts pushing into the clipping aspect of the dB meter in OBS. So gives you an idea. So let's actually totally take the drive out, but leave it where it just was. So let's hear what it sounds now. Still relatively high in the level. So I'm going to go on the assumption, because I really haven't played around with this Stomp effect much, or Stompbox, so to speak, that the level itself will probably increase your actual volume output to affect the rest of the settings and amps and so forth that you have it running into. So let's raise the level up to half now. Yes, we get an increase in the dB reading. Now we're almost into the red. We're just barely hitting the edge of the red, and fully we're now into the red. So let's back this off. Let's go back to the 9 o'clock position on the level. Start putting up the drive level. So for the most part, it's pretty much as the effect originally is meant to be. Tube Screamer. Again, not much you can say more about that than it's a Tube Screamer. So again, sorry. Let me quickly say that the Tube Screamer effect, while I don't use it on its own individually, I have used some of the patches where the Screamer is actually put into place. I think the one patch that I edited that was the Batter Bad Dog patch that I used recently actually, I believe, does have a Tube Screamer in it that I think I adjusted somewhere. Either adjusted the Tube Screamer or the amp to kind of give it a little bit more kind of ballsier sound. So, last but not least, let's touch on the good old classic Univibe, which, if you ask me, Peavey did an excellent job on this effect. I know there are Univibe purists out there, and I even admit I've heard some amazing Univibe effects. But when you talk about an effect that's built into a amp for free, you can't beat this one, literally. So again, let's hear how it sounds, how it is here. Again, I don't remember how many knobs Univibe has, but I do understand that most of them are usually just speed and depth. I know some of them, I think, have a regeneration setting, but this keeps it very simple, which is, again, sometimes a positive and is sometimes a negative with some of these modular amps and how they set up the things in their software or their effects specifically. So that's kind of the one positive slash negative in regards to when you're talking about these amps. So let's tap on a string and mess around with the let's bring the speed down. Let's go totally slow and wide open and see what we get now. where it's really, really, really slow, almost to the point I actually would say it's too slow. Cool sounding if you actually play something slow enough, though. But let's give it a slight notch in the speed here to 9-ish. That sounds a little bit more better. Let's stick with this and play around with the speed settings or the depth a little bit some more speed into play. Let's go really crazy. Accidentally clicked on the wall there, sorry. It is foot controllable in some settings and some patches, but not all times. So there really is probably the one big limit with this effect is that's the most you can get for speed out of it. And I do know that Univibes can go faster than that. Now let's turn the depth back, see what we got here. Pretty much renders the effect useless. Turn up a little. Makes it not so bad. It's not bad sounding there either. So let's see. Turn the speed down. You can probably get that Isles of Sorrow sound or whatever by Rainbow with this effect. I would probably say Peavey did a good job in getting this effect for slowing down. That's where it really excels the Univibe here. Let's just for curious sake, let's run into the lead with this and see how good or bad it sounds. For the last sake of just ending the video this way, let's throw it down into the bridge position also on the TE52 with how it is right now. So, let's kill the amp and let us go into the OBS and bring this back down in size, and you can watch that go to about, I think, there's where I had it last. So, again, this is probably about 1 hour or so video. If you have stayed here this whole time, again, thank you very much for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed me demonstrating and showing how some of the Stompbox effects on the Peavey Vypyr VIP2 specifically sound, and sound with a Tele style guitar. Again, I will attempt to do a effects only video after this, and beyond that I will then try to do a amp only video of this in continuing depths of this amp. Just to quickly summarize again, it's been 3+ years that I've had this amp, since my Vypyr Tube 60 went kablooey. The fact that I've been able to get into bass guitar when I had a bass guitar, or I've had a bass guitar, I should say, and the fact that also when I had an acoustic electric to plug into, I think has been big time assets. Again, probably to someone who is looking to be, who's a touring, I guess, musician, or, you know, playing bars, you know, not someone who's a real, you know, pro, you know, big, you know, popular star. Are they going to, you know, are they going to be buyers of a Peavey Vypyr series amplifier? Or sorry, Vypyr VIP series amplifier? Probably not. They're probably going to have their own independent and more expensive solutions. But if you're someone who hates carrying a bunch of gear to gigs for your specific setups, this is a versatile amp. This will get you the ability to plug in your acoustic guitar to play at a small venue. The VIP2 is 40 watts through the 12-inch speaker. It would be loud enough for most small to medium venues. If you actually are looking to play larger venues, I would probably suggest the VIP3 with its 100 watts, plus the additional benefit of the control panel on the actual amp, which is a very nice feature for the extra cash. But again, if you're looking for a budget but versatile amp as a gigging musician who might have to actually on occasion play bass, can't go wrong with these amps. With that said, again, thank you for watching. Hope yous are all well. Have a good rest of your weekend, because this is a Saturday when this is being filmed. And hopefully I will see you for the next video with the effects. Bye for now.